was reading it, and that kind of thing, and there's reason for that. I just whoa. But I'm grateful to all the many resources we have in this day and age that help us and me to understand that a little bit better. I do not understand. I am not an expert, but it was neat to read it and to see the symbolism that it has. We'll talk more about that in a second, but I was talking to, maybe it was my daughter, but I was thinking of this Denise. I don't know what it was. I just wonder, here comes Moses and he says, this is what the Lord told me to do, to worship him. And here's all these things, I mean, pages and pages and an entire book full of, well, this is how you kill this one particular sacrifice, and this is where you put the blood, and then you put the innards over here and the kidney there, and on this day you do this, and on that day you do that. And I wonder, we find out later that that was really a thing, that it didn't really stick, like anything the Lord commands us to do, I suppose. But I wonder if they said, ever, I don't know that it's in the scriptures, but if he ever said, and this is what this symbolizes to the children of Israel, or if it was going, okay, I guess I'll just do this. He told me to do it, so, why dost thou offer sacrifice? I don't know, because the Lord told me to, And I just wonder if, I think they probably knew that this would help me to be more spiritual, help me to grow closer to God, but do we really get the symbolisms that I'm grateful for prophets and for teachers and for scriptorians throughout the ages, in and out of the church, that help us in this day and age to see some connections there. Okay,
so the Nephite prophets understood the symbolism, and they taught it to the Nephites.
So maybe children of Israel somewhere.
Maybe
the prophets of the Old Testament maybe did too, or tried. Maybe they did. That's a great point. That's a great point. In fact, we're going to talk about that in just a second, about the Book of Mormon. But yeah, that's a great point. That they seem to get it, so maybe other people got it that we didn't. That we don't have in the scriptures or something. They must possibly. Historical context. So what's going on in the Old Testament right now, Brother Anderson? What's going on?
The Old Testament, or wandering around?
They're wandering around. A great point. In fact, Brother Halverson, I've talked about him before, but he said they wander, die. Okay. Anyway. So what's going on here with these two? Well, 35 through 40. What kind of wraps up?
That's a great question. I'm not sure.
No. I'm just putting you on the spot then, because I know you're a scriptorian. And anyway, from what I can see, anybody else? What's going on? That's fine. I'm sorry if I put you on the spot. I do that way too much.
Okay.
Talking about the tabernacle.
Tabernacle's good.
And
what's tabernacle symbolize?
And does he ever teach that? But yeah, we'll talk more about that, but the tabernacle and what it symbolizes, and so that's kind of in here, right? In the end of Exodus. And then here it's starting about the law. So they build the tabernacle, and then they talk about the law. And Leviticus is a lot more chapters than this, of course, but this is all the church has us read. Maybe some of you read the whole thing. In fact, Brother Halverson, of course, does, and he goes through it with a fine-tooth comb. But anyway, these are some of the things that they ask the priests and the people to do as they start living the law of Moses, the laws of sacrifice. Okay, so let's go to Alma chapter 34, verse 14. Just really quick. I thought this was interesting. I'm sure you'll beat me there. So this is Amulek talking. I have learned to appreciate Amulek more and more every time I read the Book of Mormon. He was an amazing man. essentially a convert, and he's out there teaching side by side with the prophet. Had some amazing things to say. Well, let's take a look at 14. Here, he is, as most of you know, he is talking to the people of Ammonihah. Ammonihah. Anyway, and he's talking about how they're so far off. Okay, who has that? Sister Rasmussen, please.
Behold, this is the whole meaning of the law, every whit, pointing to that great and last sacrifice, and that great and last sacrifice will be the Son of God, yea, infinite and eternal.
So this scripture was shared by Brother Halverson. He is not a prophet, okay? I watch listen to his podcast and stuff like that. 4.5 hours he spends in the book of Leviticus. Anyway, he mentioned this scripture. And the thing he was bringing out was, it says, every whit pointing to that great and last sacrifice. So he said, every hook, every seam, every sacrifice, every kidney should point us to Christ. And so when they're building the tabernacle, all of those things had some symbolism to them. Some of them were more obvious than others, but according to him and according to Amulek, every whit, every little piece of that tabernacle points to Christ. And here's one thing that I wanted to share with you, and that is, more than ever before, I see this way too much, but more than ever before, I'm just sitting back and looking at this Old Testament. Holy smokes, it is grand and glorious. Think about that. I listen to the Tabernacle Choir, streaming thing a lot. And every time, if you could, the hymn, If You Could Hide a Kolob, comes on, it reminds me of the Old Testament, because the Lord has this huge, magnificent, just awe-inspiring, this huge universe, and he's just trying to get us to sort of understand, the kind of majesty and not just in the stars and the suns and the planets, but in every little whit of the law and everything. I just want you to have this. And so when it comes to the Old Testament, I think probably more than any other book, it talks, maybe not directly, but it talks about the majesty of this whole thing. Isn't it amazing? So, as Amulek is teaching these people, he says, every little thing. So what are some of the items in the Mosaic Law that are symbolic? And we're just gonna skim the surface here. There's lots and lots of very deep things, like why the kidneys, and why birds and this sort of thing. But what are some of the things in the Mosaic Law that help us that are symbols of Christ? Anybody? Who's going to be brave? Yes.
The veil and the tabernacle.
Good. Excellent. The veil and the tabernacle. We'll talk more about, maybe we'll have time to talk more about the connection between the temples today, but the veil in the tabernacle. Think of the rich symbolic meaning of that veil. Did I get that when I went to the temple? Right over my head.